What's up, narrators? This is Mo, and we are back with the Narratives Per Possession podcast. Thank you for joining. And the main thing, always at Narratives Per Possession, we want to connect you to better basketball narratives. Before I get into the introduction, just a bit of housekeeping. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment as we continue to grow this wonderful YouTube channel. My guest tonight is a person that I've admired for quite some time. Anybody's been following me on this podcast, I am a Chicago Bulls fan by default, so I'm very intimately familiar with this gentleman's work. He is a credentialed reporter for CHGO Bulls. He covers the Chicago Bulls year-round. You can catch him 5 days a week on the CHGO Bulls podcast. Without any further ado, my guest tonight to talk about the hopefully resurgent Chicago Bulls, Mr. Will Gottlieb. Will the GOAT Gottlieb, thank you.
Mo, thanks so much for having me on, man. It's glad to finally make this work.
Absolutely, yeah. No, we've been talking for a while, and then I've loved your work forever. I've been in copious amounts of CHGO Bulls chats over the years, so it's just cool to have this convergence of the worlds. So to get us started, I'll be honest, I didn't think I'd be talking about the Chicago Bulls as much as I am now in a position to talk about. We had our mutual guy, Drew Stevens, on this podcast right before preseason tipped off to give a good preseason view in. And I think we hit really a lot of the common themes that I'm sure you've hit on your show and written about. It's just what direction is this franchise heading? What's what? It's another one of those AK word salad kind of media days. Covered all that. And here we are. The Bulls are coming off a really, a gutty kind of upset last night against the Denver Nuggets. The bench was strong there. I'm gonna spare us the recap, and I'll just plug CHGO up front. I know you guys do a great job doing the post game, so definitely go out there and watch CHGO's post game recap and just the show 5 days a week. To kind of open up with this interesting season that the Bulls are in right now. They opened 6-1, then in Bulls fashion, in the most Bulls fashion, I feel like, go on a 5-game losing streak. And then, like I said last night, they pull out this gutty win. From your vantage point, Will, and from what you observe and what you're covering at this moment, how would you frame, say, the current state of the union of the Chicago Bulls roster 13 games into the season?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're sort of a team that is still in flux in terms of the roster, but very much aware of and sort of standing and executing on the idea they want to have. So that's really the main theme from media day, even last year, was just like the Bulls know the team that runs. They need to be a team that moves, and that the way that they survive in today's NBA. We can talk about lack of a top 15 player, top 25 player, whatever. They don't have a star, and they don't really have a starting lineup chock full of fringe all-star that they can really lean on games. And so they sort of built up this of how are we going to survive in the modern NBA, and building on we saw with Indiana last year. Also, I do her some credit. I think they were kind of ahead of the curve. They were one of those doing this, and now you're starting to see a lot more of that sort of copycality. But yeah, I think they're a team that is sort of what are the major themes that they need to win, and now the process of I think some of the more fine details, some of the more granular details in terms of the how they're they know what they need to do. They know who they need to figure out how they need to get there. And so I think they're still in that process, and I think it'd be a process that takes a couple of years. But the fact that they are playing competitively, I know something that internally they are very excited about, and they want to be able to while they're competing. They want to take steps back. I know you guys have covered ad nauseum, but this is just not the way that they're. And so, building on the fly, building competitive, love it or hate it, that's what they're doing, and at the very least putting together the format and the blueprint for how they can do the best job of that they can.
Yeah. And what I would add to what you just said, Will, I mean, I have to give the Bulls credit there's some you are seeing the building blocks of in theory, what the vision of this Bulls organization, with headed by Arturas Karnisovas, what they're attempting to achieve. It certainly started like quote unquote second half of last season after the All-Star break, and then they go on I'm trying to avoid, well, I'll just call it for what it is because the timeline went all over it, but the Mickey Mouse March run, so to speak, right? Um, the building blocks of the offense start getting laid there, and some of the things that we'll touch on in more detail very shortly. There seems to be a much more cohesive, from my vantage point, there's much more cohesion in the offensive attack, at least from the transition standpoint, and like in that 6-1 stretch. Josh Giddey, I'll quickly shout out, but want to talk about him a bit more. He really seems like he's starting to come into his own finally, in after the protracted restricted free agency saga, and just finding consistency on the offensive end. That's a positive. Before we dive more into that offense, I want to really start with the defense, because that's the thing that is sticking out to me when I think about these first 13 games. And that very much, from my vantage point, is a work in process for sure. A couple of stats I'll throw out just for context, but then I'd love to first, get your take on the defense so far, and where do the Bulls go to improve this? So from NBA.com, during that 6-1 stretch, the Bulls are actually a top 10. They were the 10th ranked defense in terms of defensive efficiency, at 112.5 points per 100 possessions. But then they go into that 5-game losing streak, and then all of a sudden they plummet to 25th rank in that 5-game span, to 119.8 points per 100 possession in terms of defensive efficiency. So you really see this like topsy-turvy wild swing in the output of the defense. So like what are you taking away from like those first 13 games, what the Bulls are doing defensively?
I think back to the same concept that we talked about with the offensive end, and I think that's really sort of like the end of their identity, right? The defense is still like a step or two behind that in terms of establishing what they need to do and also how they need to get there. So like if you break any game segment of the season up, like you're going to see a lot of shooting variance. That's like the big talking point for the first couple of games, as they were getting super lucky on opponent 3-point shooting. I think that's kind of come back to earth here. I don't have the numbers in front of me, so correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that like in the same vein of on the line where they don't have like a superstar, they need like premier defensive players. And I think on defense, it really needs to be more of a committee sort of approach than even on the offensive side. They have not really been fully held. It's only played one game. But their starting lineup is like Trey Jones, Josh Giddey, Vucevic. Modest, I think, is an okay defender, not a great defender, a terrible defender. And Okoro, who's really like the anchor. Just think it's going to be tough to put together a really strong. You can go through stretches where you're generating some steals and turning those in, or opponents aren't shooting the ball well. Generally speaking, over a larger sample of 82 games and maybe postseason, and that is not going to be very good. Now, there's a huge difference between the 30th ranked defense and the 20th ranked defense, and the 22nd ranked defense. And if they can be somewhere towards that middle, I think that will be a pretty good outcome for them, because just personnel that they have, it's going to be very bold. So in terms of philosophy and like how they're trying these things, physicality was the big word coming in training camp, and just this idea that like they can't be a team that funnels everybody to the rim and has this elite rim to take shots away. They have to be the one turn off straight lines. Like the number one thing Billy Donovan talks about all the time is like, no matter how good your defense is if you're giving up straight line drives, that's a nightmare scenario. So keep guys in front of you, try not to gamble, execute on schemes, fill the gaps, send help, get over and like rotate when guys do help out. All the words that in terms of like things that guys are supposed to. They have to execute all that stuff at a really high level. And I think that for the most part, we have the rim defense is kind of a disaster. I think they're last in the league in terms of frequency of opponent shots at the rim. tough. But I think that the idea is, can we pressure the ball enough and try to cut off some of these drives to where at least not giving up as many drives, and instead forcing opponents to take some mid-range shots, or even if they do get into the paint, can you bring help over? You are springing out the corner, but is really strong there, and you can force them to take an above the three. Kind of a pick your poison situation. But again, like as much as they're going to be able to execute on the schemes, and I think they've done a really good job of that. It's just going to be tough. It'd be tough in where skill and high level talent is such an important factor.
Yeah. I mean, I know we're early in the season, and this Bulls track record in terms of roster change, it's I mean, it leaves a lot to be desired, to be frank, right? Like, it's just, there hasn't been a ton of aggressive moves made over the last few seasons. And this is kind of teasing towards, something I want to get into more, because I mean, it's been a lot of talk about, the Bulls and Anthony Davis. I know you've covered it at length on CSGO, but it does beg the question, perhaps before even considering like the whole parameters, or like the pros and cons of considering a superstar trade, is there perhaps another tweak or so that the Bulls need to be thinking about to actually raise that defensive floor? Because I'll say this, like, and I want to be transparent and also at the same time recuse myself of my bias. I have not really been impressed by the addition of Isaac Okoro so far in terms of like what he's contributing to the defense. I'm still waiting to see what that is supposed to be, especially considering the expectations and sort of the way both Billy and AK talked about him during media day, where he's expected to be like this guy's going to take the number one assignment every single night, and he's going to be this versatile defender. I just the things that are imprinted in my head so far are seeing Okoro matched up to his detriment, I felt like, against Giannis in that matchup. And I want to shout out Joel. I know he's new to the beat, but I don't want to mess up his last name. I thought he had some insightful observations, and he had a question that I know you guys had on CSGO, where he asked Okoro about, like, to paraphrase, so to speak, does Okoro feel confident or comfortable defending up from his position? And that seems to be like something that the Bulls are trying to lean into. I just don't see it really manifesting into like positive defensive impact so far. But I say all that because at the same time, you mentioned Trey Jones. And the other bias I have is like, I actually am like very high on what I've seen from Trey Jones, in spite of his limitations. He's 6'1". When you look at his analytics, actually, in terms of pick and roll defensive coverage, it's not great at all. But what I find he's doing exceptionally well is, even if he gets beat or he gets, he dies on the screen, so to speak, he still has an amazing ability to just recover to the ball and just create disruption and chaos.
Yeah, I mean, Trey is great. I think he's kind of overachieved expectations from for me, certainly, but I think even internally for what they thought they were getting when they made that Zach LaVine trade. I think Trey is a really good off key, like, is an incredibly smart player, very high IQ, low mistake player. See that with like the assist stuff on the offensive end. I think you see it on then with understanding the scheme, knowing where to be. It's like, I think it's like underappreciated in the NBA. It's just like being in the right spot at the right time on D. And he's always in the right spot at the right. You mentioned the limitations. He's 6'1" and probably 170 pounds. He's just not going to be able to put up a ton of resistance against even like normal sized guards in right now. So they do need somebody to take on those assignments. Okoro has been the guy. He is probably better at defending positions. I think he's like 6'4", 6'5". He uses his length. He's a really physical player. Can like get his chest into guys, get airspace. And just front of him, he's not like a high fluctuations player. He's not generating a lot of defense in terms of steals and blocks. But he is, I think pretty good at keeping the ball in front of him. And to what about like trying to turn off before that happens. I think that's incredibly important for the Bulls. Now, is one perimeter defender going to be able to solve all of your problems, especially when the rest of it's such a relatively low level? Absolutely not. But I just don't really know that they have like an option out there. And when Joel was asking Okoro that, and he's of course going to say yeah, whoever need me to guard, like I'm going to do what I'm asked of, and like that's his reputation. That's like the role he wants to do. But it's also but like everybody has a trouble with Giannis. Everybody trouble with Donovan. It's not like a Okoro particular. I said this before this started though. Like I think Okoro in terms of offensive EPM last year is plus 7. That's like 80. That's like 80th now. That's like he's a good defender. He's not 99, but like number 1 in the league, like Alex Russo. Going to revolutionize the defense on him. And we can talk about like what kind of trades they might need. I do think that if you are going to out of like the basement of defense, you need to bring in talent, but then you have questions about like, can those guys play out offensively? What are they taking away from you, and especially in terms of spacing there as well. So it's kind of like understanding all the kind of the problems and issues associated with team building, and like having to perpetrate each and every one to get the roster together. And it's just a hard thing to do. And it's harder when you need to play a certain style because the limitations that your primary ball handlers have. So it's a complicated challenge. I think Okoro helps. I'm not spread on him. Probably not like he's totally over that end. Like I think he's a good solid defender. I think he's like turning defense on his own way that Caruso did.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair to him, I would hope either through another roster acquisition or just some sort of evolution over the course of this season. Like something needs to help out Okoro in the grand scheme of things. That's just like my early take on.
And like Okoro's probably best suited off the bench. Like realistically, championship he's coming off the bench, and he's kind of like 7th or 8th man type of player can come in, give you a spark. When he's the number 1 assignment for Giannis and Paolo and Donovan Mitchell, and it's going to be tough. And I think, like I said, he does provide in a lot of ways, and that is kind of what the Bulls are defensively. But he just can't be the only one out there. And even if he is the only one, like he's probably not good enough on his own to really transform things.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question, because this is a hypothetical that I've tossed out a few times on the timeline. We're reaching a point where now Kobe White has finally made his season debut. He's still on minutes restriction, but assuming, we've gone beyond the point where Kobe is no longer minutes restricted, if there were a lineup, I'm not going to necessarily suggest it as the starting lineup, although for me, given my personal preferences, I might look at this as a lineup. What would your impressions be if there was a potential lineup of a Giddey, Trey Jones, Kobe, and then Modest and Vooch as your front court, basically?
I mean, I'm open to it. I think we need to like try out a bunch of different lineups and see what works best. Billy has been adamant about being 2 or more handlers on the court. And so like that lineup that you mentioned accomplishes that. And I think that's been really important. It's been really important for like Modest, who have some ball handling ability. Ideally, can get to a point where they're really creating, but right now primarily a play finisher. I think there's something to be said also for like fully offense, and not like putting in a position where you have a good defender out there solving everything, but also he's not really being guarded. Got to like play the baseline, or you've got to have him slot cuts, or whatever it is. I think there's something to be said for that. I don't know if that's your closing lineup or starting lineup, or trying it out during the middle of the game. But my feeling on that is that they're not in a situation where like they should set on anything with their roster. And so I feel like that can give you a good opportunity, or maybe use some lineup combinations where 3 or 4 of those guys together well. And you want to try putting Kobe in there. Let's get the ball up the court, shoot a ton of threes, get downhill, straight out. And try to generate steals. Like, I don't mind that at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and just like my thought on that is a lineup option. And again, like I have to confess, having sort of like a near anti-Okoro bias at the moment, I feel like the defensive aspects of it, because Kobe's obviously, I think we all know that there's a ceiling to what sort of individual defensive impact you will get out of a Kobe White. It's kind of a push to me right now between like what will I get out of Kobe White versus Okoro on the floor. I know what the difference is between Kobe White's offense and Okoro's offense, respectively, right? It's at some point, no, go ahead.
Let me ask you though, like lineup, who is guarding Giannis, guarding Donovan Mitchell, who is guarding, any of these guys. Like you do, I think there's sort of this idea that like it's your five, and like five individual defenders are good, then we'll have a chance. But like that's how it works. I think there's so much interplay between positions and help response that like go under notice or under. And I think a lot of guys that are maybe not thought of as good defenders are good at some of those things, like the fills in the gaps and all that stuff. I'm not saying like, the guys that we're talking about are like excellent at that and that they'd be good enough, but you also, my larger point, you need somebody to like run the ball. And I want like Giddey, I think are there. Kobe's gotten a lot better. Trey has limitations, but I think he fights. I don't think Modest is like really ready to do that. I think he's an off-ball player, a lot better at like getting over screens, and just like providing resistance. But I still like gives up driving lanes a little too easily. And even as a rim protector, like he block shots and like he can, recover and stuff away, but he also just gives up the rim, I think, a little bit too. And with Vooch back there, I think that's just going to be. But maybe the answer is you can do that if you get a rim protector that you can funnel to. Maybe Davis, maybe it's somebody else, but that would be like sort of hesitation with it. Even though I still would be totally.
Yeah, and it's the thought that comes to mind now. You saying that as well, Will. Maybe the rim protector piece, that probably is a crucial aspect of it, because I think of the four, Vooch aside, there is a big question about like who is the point of attacking that kind of lineup setup. Keeping the ball in front could be a challenge, as you're mentioning. So maybe instead of Vooch, maybe it's Giddey, Kobe, Trey Jones, Modest, Zach Collins when he returns, ideally lineup.
Yeah, I mean Collins was really good for them last year. Talking about this on our show today, he was like 10 in terms of on-off defense, which was like 98th percentile. He's never been that guy though before that, so I'm a little bit skeptical that's real. But like if he defends or the team defends with him on the court at the level that they were last year, like that could totally. He's really like a high blocks guy. He's got the short wingspan, tag on him or whatever from combine. But the numbers. So if you're defending, the team is executing on those schemes really well in your. Let's see that for sure. But he's going to be out probably another week or 10 days. Broke his wrist, I think, in the last preseason or something like that. So they haven't been able to. Smith has done a pretty good job, especially over the last, like, offensively, especially. He's a little bit more rim protection to him, but I don't think he's necessarily like anchor your defense for 36 minutes type of point.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So it's probably a good transition. So you touched on Modest a bit, but let's go a bit deeper into Modest's, now going into his second NBA season. And he really surprisingly started, even before the season started, there was a lot of national sort of spotlight he started to garner. Really, I feel like before the Bulls even took the floor. I had a previous guest on here. He covers the Denver Nuggets from Mile High Sports, Swiper. He just unsolicited gushed about Modest. So there are all these different national sort of personalities and people covering the league outside Chicago that already are expecting so much of Modest. What have you taken away from Modest's performance? I mean, in broader standpoint, I mean, you talked about some of the defensive things you're seeing, just overall, and especially given sort of what the game plan was intended to be for Modest this season, where he's getting more usage now, he's getting more on ball reps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think just last season, people with the lack of minutes in Chicago, like you'd hear that in the YouTube comments after everything. Why isn't Modest playing more? Before the All-Star, 15.8 minutes per game, so nothing. Certainly took a big leap there after all. And internally, and like the way that Billy Donovan has it is like similar to that, like not wanting to rebuild and tank and go through the process that way. Like they want their view of what player entails is players learn to be a part of winning basketball. So like in order for Modest minutes, he needs to execute the schemes that are having a basketball game. And you can't really have that if they're competitive, but also you need him to be able to and what the assignment is for him to be able to keep him out there. And so Billy had a super with him. He's mentioned that a handful of times. Modest has been very outspoken about wanting that coaching and like to be kind of yelled at and told what to do and explain why what he was doing was wrong. And he really great ability to like put aside afterwards and like not take it personally, like dwell on mistakes, not internalize it, learn from it, and move on. I think that's what's kind of allowed him to take a step forward here. I agree with you. I don't think it's a full leap into like stardom that we've seen so far this year. I think that's exciting. He was putting up like 20 a night, and I think that got him a lot of attention. He was doing a lot, but I do think that some of it is lost in the like dunks and highlights. Those are great, but like he needs to be doing more stuff on a play basis, executing the scheme, getting thoughts, making the right decision with the basketball wing, thinking quickly. He's gotten a lot better on that stuff. Don't get me wrong, but I think he's over these last 10 games or so, 10, but like there's going to be ups and downs, just like this linear hockey stick of growth where he's just like a superstar all of a sudden. There's a great line like right before the season or early on in the season, like he has not arrived yet. He just hasn't. And I think that's absolutely right. I really agree with that Billy has approached his development, and I think that one thing Billy said is like in terms of minutes, in terms of role and responsibility, he's earned it. I think that's a really good thing for a 21-year-old to have. So I'm very high on Modest's future. I don't quite there yet, but I think he's gotten a lot. You're already kind of starting to see he's executing on like some of the small things. He's accomplishing the play-by-play stuff, but he also has these flashes of ball or of athleticism, three-point shooting shotter than it was with G League Ignite, which is probably why he flew 11 in the draft. So very high on Modest's future. I don't think he's been like a full-on breakout quite yet.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The breakout is not quite there. One of the things a couple of data points I would throw out about Modest. So Modest per cleaning the glass. He's attacking the rim much more. Last season or his rookie season, he was 41% of his shot attempts were happening at the rim. This season, he's getting that up to 47%. The challenge in that is actually finishing at the rim right now. It really hasn't changed all that much. I mean, his field goal percentage at the rim is 59% this season. Last season it was 58%. So certainly, a big part of his game, are the highlights that people know from him. So you hope to see a bit more efficiency there.
Percent sounds high. 59% sounds high for a percentage. But like if you're a power forward NBA, you got to be like mid 60s, 70s, like that. You're like he's got the explosion in the athleticism to be able to finish. And I think he part of it is because he's doing a little bit more creation this year on the ball, pick and roll stuff, and he's got like a handful of move or two. But he has not like he had a ton of dunks in preseason. That has not really been the case in the season so far. He's not a lob threat in the court, but like amount of transition that'll obviously numbers. But I do think he needs to be better at finishing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because that 59% I mentioned. I mean, that's what is it? That is 29 percentile according to Clean Glass. So yeah. So he's got a lot of work to do there. Despite the highlights at the rim, he needs to be more efficient at the rim as well.
For sure, I think that's a big step for him. I would see him get to a point where he's like creating a little bit more, and they're integrating that. But but I think now he's primarily a play finisher. The way they're trying to play as a group is like not really have any possessions in court or like treat half court as if it's transition anyway. And so it's not like pounding the ball, and it's like back cuts, and like those are the ones. Those are ones you should be finishing at a 60% clip.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it helps that for sure. Moving from Oz a bit to now Josh Giddey, that those improvements, those are solid improvements. And I will be the first to admit also, like I was, for what anti-core bias I had, I was pretty resoundingly like skeptical of Giddey's addition to this Chicago Bulls organization last season. And it was primarily two things that I hammered like throughout that whole first season. Josh Giddey was he has to become a better 3-point shooter to start to command some level of defensive rotation or create that for others, and then the defense on his end. In these first 13 games, I have really nothing to knock him on at this point, which is great. I think he's doing exactly what he should be doing, especially in terms of just now, like it seems he is confident in his body in terms of how he drives to the rim now and how he plays through contact. And just being better, just being a better 6'8" NBA basketball player all around. What have you taken away from Giddey at this point?
Yeah, I think he's done a couple of different things this game that have made me feel pretty. I don't know if I would say confident, but like comfortable in where he is as opposed to like his perception and the numbers that he's put up, and like maybe being an all-star this year. Number one for us is the physicality. Again, the shocking point on this team, and a lot of people think about that in terms of like defense or physical or fighting with guy, whatever. Like he's doing defensively, where he's just putting his shoulder as getting to the rim, getting to the paint, either finishing or and like that change I think for him pretty notable, even from the second half of last year. Foul rate was a lot better in terms of drawing fouls, but he has taken that to a level and like leaned into understanding okay, what to do in order to be really effective as a basketball player, because obviously he's a passer, but if you're just like going under screens on him, not worried about him, or you're giving up the floater, fine, you can play him to the pass. He's just not, and so he had to find a way to like become a threat as a scorer, and that I think has opened up a lot of the different game that he is really naturally good at. So I think quality has been a big one, and not just the shot, but just playing off the ball in general. The 3-point shooting I think is similar. I know it's dipped down a little bit this year. It's like 30, but he was up at over a while. I think he's just in a bit of a cold spell. I'm pretty good about him being like 35 to 37, maybe 8% on threes. And I think that's probably good enough, especially if they're wide open and you're just giving those up. Like he's gonna make you pay. That's great, but I think the cutting, moving off of that stuff has gotten a lot better too, as both an individual and like for the entire team. And that's the kind of where again it's like, okay, you want to give the ball, you want to let him sort of be the primary scorer on a possession out there. How do you make that work? And I think that's going to be sort of a process and just like how to play together that takes some time. But Giddey, both like in terms of understanding, I need to dig into it, but then also just like executing on it. I think he's gotten a lot better there. And those two things combined, I think already have a good foundation of like pounding. He's an incredible defensive rebounder. I think he's like starting to be a pretty good player. And I don't know what the all-star situation will be this year, but he's putting up those kind of numbers, and maybe that's enough. I think his impact is like nearing that level for this team. Not quite there yet, but like he has impressed me, because I was not super high on him. Really has grown in some ways that I think are pretty meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah, and we both kind of alluded to at the very beginning of our conversation. The Bulls, they are figuring out their identity. They are starting to show some things that you would consider to be, the potential building blocks of becoming a competitive, the tried and true Bulls phrase, NBA team, a legitimate competitive team. And Josh Giddey is really becoming a central focal point of that. And the thing that, like, I also want to make sure I don't dismiss is, the effort he is giving now on defense, that is also, I think, a big positive trend for him and going in the right direction. I just, I think about that clutch play in that upset win the Bulls had against the 76ers, where, I mean, he held his ground exceptionally well against Tyrese Maxey to get that one stop before the Bulls pulled out the game. And just seeing him willing to put forth that effort night in, night out, you hope that's also part of what could, spark some level of improvement or uptrend in the Bulls' defensive efficiency. Is, when you have Josh Giddey, presumably the leader of your roster, just putting forth the effort, you hope that that's something where, like, the other four guys on the floor are seeing that, and that's becoming a contagion.
Yeah, and it's all to me it's limiting, mitigating weaknesses, and like not a player is going to be super laterally quick, getting over, or even deflecting a bunch of passes and passing lanes. I think that's okay. I think he needs to be like, he needs to maximize what he can do with his tools, right? And so he's a very high IQ player. Can you turn that into defense? Can you like, turn some of the reading of the game from offensive out to the deep, so that you can maybe generate a few steals. I think the Bulls are less than opponent turnover percentage. Like they need to get out a bit more. Forcing some turnovers would be a great way to do that, and get enough player to be able to jump some passing lanes, and where rotations are going, where the pass is supposed to go, that he can jump some of that stuff. If he does get beaten dribble, he's long, he's tall. Like, can you deflect some shots? Can you try to at least shots more contested? I think he's done a lot better at that. For the last year, I mean, he's like not really putting forth that type of effort. I think you're used to it, but I think for the most part, he's been a lot better. And overall, it's like all those guys need. It's not just Gideon. Kobe needs to be better in certain areas. Like all of these guys need to really maximize what they're able to do on that end, and with physical tools, and that's going to give them the best chance. A lot of it just comes down to like effort, and that's what this team is really about, is like out efforting teams on both sides. And I was not expecting them to 5-0. I wasn't expecting them to start 6. And so I think like that effort has been a pretty big one. Though obviously their skill level isn't necessarily par with some of the other playing.
Yeah, and thinking about these first 13 games, I really don't know if there's a better sort of like poster child representation of the Bulls' effort than their actual bench squad at this point. The bench like resoundingly took down Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets last night. And there's an interesting stat that I noticed about the Bulls bench at this point. So 13 games into the season, the Bulls bench, their net rate. So the Bulls, just strictly on bench players, the Bulls have the 5th highest net rating in the league right now, plus 2.9. I mean, it's not nothing. I feel like to just acknowledge that has been it seems to be a recurrent strength for the Bulls, and pulling out some of these wins that perhaps nobody expected. Certainly in that 6-1 stretch. What do you take away from what the bench depth is delivering for the Bulls so far in this first 13 seasons? And I mean, I say that also under, knowing me personally, there's been a lot of derision about that infamous quote AK had about the 9-10 good guys. So like, I guess now perhaps AK is getting some.
It's on you.
Here. Yeah, it's on me.
I think like, I guess the kind of like harsh way to say this is like thing you say when you don't have a pathway to get a star. You just like build a team of players that you can get that are, and like, to their credit, they did that. And I also like depth is becoming more in today's NBA. I'm not saying like you can win championship with like a deep team with no stars, but I think that in the regular season, playing hard, playing with effort, playing fast, and having the ability to go 10 deep is a recipe to like winning Houston games. I would assume in his return he had the shoulder injury. He missed the last 20 some odd games, maybe more. And awesome, he was 8 of 9 last night, shooting 50, 40, 90. I think I saw a stat from StatMuse that he is the most points of any player in the 50, 40, 90 club so this year. So he's been super efficient. guy who just puts his head down, gets to the rim, and just blows and gets layups. And that's really like their mentality. Last night it was very up against the Nuggets, where Jokic was on the minute or two of his first quarter stint, like a minute or two left in the fourth, maybe 3. Bulls bench comes. Jokic has been 7, 8, 9 minutes, and they just steal, run out, and they're able to this flow state and use momentum in their favor to like generate some turnovers and get out in transition and get. I don't think the Bulls bench is, I don't know what the average, net rating of bench units is here. And I don't think the Bulls are necessarily playing bench against your bench, but I do think that they have basically been able to limit start minutes a little bit than other teams might, given like starts, and have that sort of pace and throughout the course of a game be sort of startling. I know there's been some work on like impact of pace on net rating and like a lot of correlation there, no correlation there. I do think that just it can impact the momentum of games. And Bulls bench last night outscored the Nuggets 6-9. They went on like a 18-2 run or something like that. They built a huge lead in that first and second quarter. Starters gave it up. So like the numbers aren't going to look good and often and things like that, but that's just like a tool that they have at their disposal. I do think their bench is probably stronger than most benches. If you can build a bit of a lead when your starters are out of the game over the course of 82, that can be pretty effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And it has sparked my curiosity about what sort of outcomes could this Bulls team have this season. To a level I haven't really felt, honestly, since sort of the first grand reconstruction of the roster that AK had, where he brought in DeMar DeRozan and Alex Caruso, and then Lonzo, of course. It when I think about where the Bulls were at the culmination of that 6-1 stretch, and then like the Anthony Davis rumor that's come up, I personally have had some thoughts about like, if the Bulls were to do a star trade, who is that person? I will say up front, I don't know. Like, for me personally, AD probably just doesn't feel enough if you're going to do the all-in superstar trade. And so I say all that to frame a question of like, it feels like there's a potential existential moment that could arise out of this Bulls season with this sort of depth. Is there a inflection point for the Bulls where like they should at least put themselves in position as best as possible to go after a superstar? Not necessarily Anthony Davis, but like, is this the time where they need to consider that? Given this East also, like when you consider just the flux of roster in play with other franchises.
Yeah. Let's break that into two. So number one, do the Bulls need to go? Bulls need to go. 3 questions. Number one, do the Bulls need after star? I think they'll do. Like, I don't think you can win at a high level league without star players. That's just kind of my thought on it. Like, you can disagree. I feel like you still need in today's NBA. You need probably depth too. You need the right system too, but like stars. And the second question would be, is Anthony the right guy? At whatever cost it is. I don't know. I'm kind of talking myself into it. One, I don't think the cost will be super high. I think like the search is not going to get the haul that they for him. He's got 2.5 years left on his contract player option. The way that contracts are in the league, like teams don't want to be paying, especially ones that they stay healthy. I get all the concerns. Are in a unique position where they are paying like primary ball handler $20 million a year, which is like 15% of the cap. You can go out and make some to take on players that maybe overpaid or maybe in the future or the current like CBA world, like you wouldn't necessarily want to pay a contract because they're not like a one option on championship caliber team. The Bulls can afford to do that given their cap structure. And I think like inflection point that you're asking about is kind of like this summer. You got 7 or 8 guys coming off the books, cap space coming up. I do think that this is at the time where you want to make those moves before you re-sign White, and obviously if that's the direction you want to go. So I think like timing wise, that could be this could be. I think it kind of is a time where you'd want to make that move in terms of. I think Anthony Davis is like way underrated, right? Still an elite defensive player. Like what do the Bulls need? They need defense. They need a top 15 player. He's both of those things, and he doesn't quite as much. I think he could complement Giddey well. He could give you a cool spacing that they don't really have. They talk a lot like the value lines on the court, and like the shots are the rim is number one, and so that can get there, finish there. But also be an elite defensive player. I think that's really important. And I actually think like there's probably nobody else except for like Wembanyama who would be like a better option there. In terms of like skill and ability, both offensively with the ball and playing off the ball, and defensively as a rim protector, a really good fit. And I think also it's just like the question of would they do it? I don't think they will. I think they are just in a position where they want to like in anything right now. I think they want to take it slow, Giddey, see what they have in Mata, see how they go along with Kobe. Do they want to retain him? I think they're going to do this and not accelerate things. They Zach LaVine's huge contract. They definitely have cap space. All that stuff is well and good. My thing is like you only have cap space until you don't. You need to make decisions. So would sign everybody and like pay everybody to come back and same team, or take a swing on a star player who is basically being low right now. And I think for me, I take that swing. You could zoom out and further say like rather go the rebuild route, and like strip it down and build something properly. They're not going to do that either. Within what they're going to do, I don't think Anthony Davis would like solve a lot of their problems, make them a much more competitive. I don't think he would be the finishing piece, but I think maybe gets you one step closer to that. Have some flexibility beyond that. You go out to someone else, or maybe Modest takes another step forward and looks a lot like Anthony Davis.
Here's I want to bounce before we get out here. I also want to bounce one more fun thought exercise off of you that I've had about this whole superstar concept, and it's putting aside the history of Arturas Karnisovas, his MO as far as how he approaches trades, how he approaches roster moves in general. Before the Anthony Davis idea popped up, when a lot of Bulls fans really started like making, and it might have been after the first loss, but as the sort of the volume on like the Bulls need a superstar, it started to increase. The idea I've had is if the Bulls were to do that, for a lot of reasons you just mentioned about, like maybe instead of doing that, you just wait, see what you have with Giddey right now and just let it run its course. If you were to sort of go away from that and go for the superstar move, I'm of the mindset, at least just hypothetically or philosophically, if you're going to go for that, like really push the envelope, go for an all-NBA guy at this point. And what comes to mind when I think about like at least the current all-NBA team is not hyperbolic at all. Like LeBron James is on an expiring contract for the first time in his career. Would you consider as a hypothetical, and this is just thought exercise, if you had the opportunity to get LeBron James, and certainly like the front office had some experience working with LeBron James representation, if you had the ability to sell LeBron on like, here's the next chapter of your legacy, he's a legacy conscious person, if it costs a now MVP ladder tier Giddey and Kobe, like, is that something you consider? And in terms of
a trade or free agency this summer,
either or, like either if it within either transaction period, like that's opportunity presents itself because LeBron is on expiring. We are in this post Luka trade world where like weird stuff can happen and it's not that crazy anymore.
Yeah. I have never thought about that. So maybe there. I probably go just because I think like the window is not at a point where like I just don't know how many years LeBron has left. And like if there's a 2 or 3 year window and he was somebody that like either put you into contention or be the piece away from to put you in contention. I think you would have to look at it. I just don't really feel like he's I don't know. I'm curious. I think he's coming back tonight, right? Like I'm curious to
Yeah, he's
see what
supposed
he
to make
looks
his
like.
yeah.
I just feel like I would want like I feel like with Anthony Davis, for example, there's a little bit more run, and maybe you would laugh at me and say he doesn't play and he plays 50 games, whatever. He's only 30, it's 41. So I just don't really like what the window like with that, because not like you could say, okay, let's get LeBron here, and now you have him next to Giddy, and by the way, solve any of the rim protection or defensive issues, nor does it really solve the like floor spacing stuff. But at least with Anthony Davis, say, okay, you got like a 2 or 3 year window while getting relatively small contract. Like you could still go out and get another piece, and maybe you do have the 3 or 4 guys that you need to set you up. With LeBron, I just don't know if you've got to get LeBron in there, and then got to make the next move. It's like by that time he's 42, 43, 44. So I don't know that he's going to play that long. He's going to play shorten my runway that much, but also if you could get LeBron James, you please look at it.
Yeah. I had to at least like get your brain expand your brain.
Was not prepared for that one.
Yeah. No, because like I know you're great. Like you always have a way of just framing basketball situations in general. So I appreciate just being able to hear you like process that, because that is a genuine sort of like thought bubble that just hit me once everybody, again, the Bulls fans just started turning up the noise or the volume on this whole concept of the superstar trade. And I just think on one hand, if you can get a superstar, get a superstar. But at the same time, I see a pathway with this depth that the Bulls have right now, with some improvements that you're starting to see in Josh Giddey, where I'm probably not as antsy as I would be otherwise about going to get the superstar. In philosophy, I agree. Like you need the superstar to win. However, like there's context and there's timing to that right now, and I don't know if that's necessarily the priority the Bulls should tackle at the moment, because
and
there's other things.
I think right? I agree with that. Like I'm not sure this is the right time to do it. The cap is kind of, or like the sheet is kind of lining up in a way where like you do have an opportunity, you want to take it. Again, I don't think the Bulls are like organizationally ready to do that right now. But like if you just the top 25 players in the NBA, say how many of them are available? Probably say, let's say it's half of them. I don't know, but let's say it's half of them. Let's say there's 12 available guys in the top 5 that you could potentially go after. And then you look, and for a Giannis, it's probably going to be first round picks, Modest and Noah. For Luka, probably be 4 first round picks, Modest, Noah. For Anthony Davis, it might Patrick Williams, some expiring contracts, 1 first round pick, maybe Noah in there. Like to get him, I think it's just nowhere close to what it would be other top 25 players that are all available. And then you look at the things that this, right? Like we've talked about the defense and to really get up into guys and gamble on passing lanes because there's no one on the backside. You talk about like Giddey and his limitation, having the ball in his hands, not really effective without the ball. Who are the stars that accomplish the rim protection and the ability away from the ball to play secondary option interactions as a big? Like they're just so I think the fit actually makes a lot of sense. I totally understand the reservations and the risks with it. But for me, it's just to answer a lot of questions, and he's like probably the cheapest EA type player that would be available right
now. Yeah, those are all fair considerations as well.
But also, like, you just don't want to like go invest in age. Like I totally. I'm not going to push.
Yeah, like I don't discount that either. I mean, but at the same time, also it's just unprecedented that somebody like a LeBron at his age is still like at this level of production as he is. So it's hard for me to like completely sell on that or discount that, because I feel like until injury completely takes him down or something, like he's capable of still putting up like MVP numbers.
I think the fit with him, basketball fit, I don't think would be as good. With Kobe, with the pace of play, with the limitations defensively. I don't think he'd be as good a fit. But if you're in the NBA Finals and you need a guy, like he's probably towards the top of that list.
Yeah, and then it just the history also of like I think we all know what LeBron James can do with the weak Eastern Conference. So
yeah,
so there's
that
that.
one the hard way. That one the hard way.
Sadly, well, with that, Will, I really appreciate your time tonight. I think this is a great conversation and a good timely one as well, because given just the ups and downs of what this bull season has been, I really love just being able to have your mind in this conversation to help sort of bring some sort of rationalization and some framing to like what we're seeing from this team so far.
I really appreciate. Hopefully the microphone sounded okay. Sorry to everyone that's watching live. My stuff was not working properly, but hopefully we got that worked out. And Mo, always appreciate it. Love what you guys are doing. At Narrative Spur. And keep up the great.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Any plugs you want to leave the audience with before we get out of here?
Yeah, if you're interested in the Bulls, CHGO Bulls. We're doing it every day, and I'm writing about the team on the beat sheet, so plenty of content.
Absolutely, and I will, of course, plug. Please subscribe to the Narratives Per Possession here on YouTube. We keep running the Narratives Per Possession podcast here. I have a second podcast as well that we launched about a month ago, and it's a cool one actually. We'll call it Coach Conversations. And that's going to be more of an X&O conversation or X&O podcast. Our first guest that we had on was actually associate men's head coach from the Rice basketball program. So that was cool. And we talked about at the time, it seemed like, they might have some positive things there, but we did talk about the New Orleans Pelicans offense, like from the preseason. They got some things to work out for sure, say the least. But yeah. Please subscribe to us here on YouTube. Also, consider joining our Patreon community where we have written content out there and video content as well. So with that, Will, once again, thank you, sir, for coming on to the show tonight, and really appreciate having you on.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, man.